Hi, my name is Abhishek Matthew and I'm a speaking staff at B-GHUD. In this video, I'll share a few basic insights about IELTS speaking. In IELTS, the listening, writing and reading test takes place on a separate day and this takes place together. Speaking test, on the other hand, takes place on a different day. This can either be after your listening, writing, reading test or before it. All you have to do is wait for an email from British Council or IDP before confirming in which your speaking date and venue is confirmed. You have to make sure that you reach the speaking venue 30 minutes prior to the commencement of your exam, and you have to carry your own passport with you. Please bear in mind that for your IELTS test, it is only the passport that they accept as an identification document. No other identification documents are accepted by either British Council or IDP. Now let's look into some basic insights about IELTS speaking. The entire speaking test lasts for about 13 to 15 minutes only, and that makes this test relatively simple. You have to perform your best just for a span of 13 to 15 minutes. Once you reach the test venue, there will be few verification stages with the external invigilators, after which you will be asked to wait for a while for your examiner to get ready for the test. Once the examiner is ready, you will then be guided to the room in which the examiner sits. Okay? The external invigilator then hands you over to your examiner, and then the examiner will greet you inside. You have to bear in mind that the IELTS speaking test is like a formal interview. The examiner sits right opposite to you, and inside that room it is just the examiner and the candidate. Please note that the IELTS speaking test is recorded. Once you are seated, the examiner will then give a brief introduction about the examiner, will introduce the examiner and tell his ID number, after which he will tell few basic introduction tips about your examination. The examiner will say the IELTS speaking test is divided into 3 parts and few other introduction tips. After which the examiner will ask you to state your name, and before you enter into the main part of your speaking test, there is this verification stage that you have to complete with the examiner. The examiner will first ask you to tell your name, and you have to tell your full name as mentioned in your passport. If you have any short forms, you have to expand that and state your name as mentioned in your passport. After this verification stage, the examiner will tell that your speaking test is about to begin, and the examiner will give you an introduction before each part. Now let's see how a speaking test happens and how the parts are divided. The entire speaking test, as I mentioned before, is divided into 3 parts, and before each part, the examiner will give you a brief introduction. So let's see what are the parts of the IELTS speaking test, and I will tell you how you can perform well in each part of your speaking test. The first part of your speaking test is called the warm-up session or the ice-breaking session. In this session, you can expect more or less personal questions. Majority of the questions in this part are either closely related to you or widely related to you. You have to be cheerful, try to maintain a positive atmosphere, and try to pass on a positivity to the examiner. It helps to maintain a friendly atmosphere with the examiner, and it also reflects your confidence level. Always remember that the warm-up session is the first part of your speaking test, and you might already be knowing the fact that first impression is the best impression. This particular part of your speaking test lasts for about 4 to 5 minutes, and it depends upon the examiner. Some examiners might find it, or some examiners might ask more questions in part 1, and some examiners more questions in part 3. So it totally depends upon the examiner. In general, the first part of your speaking test lasts approximately for about 4 to 5 minutes. Another factor that you have to bear in mind is to focus on your tense and maintain good pronunciation, and you have to have good grammatical range and accuracy. It helps you to show the examiner in the first stage itself that you are a competent candidate. Having said that, let's move on to part 2 of your speaking test, and this part is called the cue card or the task card session. As soon as you complete your first part, the examiner will tell that you have actually come to an end of part 1, and now it is the part 2 of your speaking test. Okay? Then the examiner will give you a brief introduction about this part. In this session, the examiner will give you a topic and you have to speak about that topic for about 1 to 2 minutes. You will have 1 minute time to come up with an answer or to prepare an answer for this, after which you will have to start speaking. The examiner will tell you when to start and the examiner will ask you when to stop. 100% of the questions in this part are personal questions and it is related to you. If you do not know an answer, always try to come up with something or the other. You have to be really good in building sentences and connecting these together. Please make sure that you read the question carefully before coming up with an answer. It is very important that you read each and every word very carefully, as it is very important in this particular part of your speaking test. Keyword analysis is very important. For example, let's take a sample question. Let the question be, talk about a long car journey that you went on recently. Say for instance, you got this question for your examination. You have to read the question carefully, understand the keywords. There are 2 very important keywords in this particular question. The first one is long and the second one is recently. While speaking your cue card or while talking about the incident, you have to mention that the journey was long enough. You can either state the distance from the starting point to the ending point, or you can mention the total time taken for the trip. You also have to mention that you have taken this trip somewhere in the recent past. So make sure that you read the question carefully and analyze your keywords before beginning your cue card. Always make sure to begin your cue card with an introduction, as it really helps you to organize it further. After your cue card session, the examiner will ask you to stop. The main challenge that you face in this particular part of your speaking test is the fact that you will not be allowed to look into the timer. You will have to bear in mind that it is the examiner who tells you when to start and when to stop. Please make sure that you speak till the examiner asks you to stop. After the session, then the examiner will tell you to please stop your answer, and then the examiner will give you a brief introduction about part 3 of your speaking test. The part 3 of your speaking test lasts for about 6 to 7 minutes, and majority of the questions in this part are general questions. 95% of the questions you can expect general questions, and 5% you can expect personal questions as well. This part is called the two-way discussion part, and the examiner will either ask you some questions based on your cue card, or the examiner can ask you entirely different general questions. Always try to elaborate your answer in this particular part of your speaking test, as it is very important for you to speak more. You can expect opinion-based questions, advantage, disadvantage-based questions, quality of a person or a profession-based question, and comparison and difference type of questions. It is very important for you to state an example. Try to come up with examples and make sure that you state a global example for a general question. When you get a general question, it is very important to broaden your perspective, to widen your horizon, and try to speak about things that happen in and around the world. Try not to confine the examples to yourself, and be positive again and try to give your opinion in this particular part of your speaking test. Having said that, that is the interview speaking test. The examiner will even mention that you have come to an end to your speaking test. And as I mentioned in the beginning, it lasts for about 13 to 15 minutes. Now let's see the evaluation criteria of your speaking test. The four major factors of evaluation are fluency and coherence, grammatical range and accuracy, pronunciation, and lexical resource. Fluency and coherence evaluates how good are you in speaking English, and how good are you in organizing your answers, and you have to speak answers to the question asked. Please try not to deviate from your topic. If you deviate in any circumstances, your coherence will get a severe hit. The second evaluation factor is grammatical range and accuracy. You have to have good sentence construction skills. You have to focus on your grammar. Try not to deviate from your tenses. Third one is called pronunciation. You have to have good skills in pronunciation and try not to mispronounce a word. The fourth and the most important one is lexical resource, which majority of the students do not score well. Lexical resource includes a topic-related vocabulary and hedging words. It's very important to come up with synonyms. I'm not mentioning about high-end vocabulary. It is just synonyms that you have to use for your speaking test. Please try to maintain your fluency. Try to maintain a natural tone. Try not to incorporate too many words which you have not used before, as it might spoil your naturality. Be confident, be audible enough throughout the test. Make sure that the examiner understands that you are a competent candidate. Thanks a lot. I hope my tips were insightful to you. All the best for your exams. Thank you. Thanks a lot.